Yo, what's up, everyone? Welcome back to another episode of Unfucking Your CX. Everyone knows me, but I am so excited to welcome Michael Lowenstein to the hot seat. Michael, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you, Zach. Great to be here.
Michael and I met really over LinkedIn. You and I have just sparked up some conversation through each other's kind of posting, sharing just our own experiences, and really just had engaging dialogue in the comments. And so I'm really excited that bringing you to the hot seat is what brought us together digitally. But I'm really curious, Michael, like this is a conversation where we're having as just two colleagues. So, is this happening in your favorite pub, favorite coffee shop, favorite place to eat, or are we doing something else?
No, this is from my office in Kennett Square, Pennsylvania, mushroom capital of the world. The three communities, including the one that I'm in, account for 70% of the mushroom production in the United States. So we are the mushroom capital of the world, and I know that because right near where I live, we've got at least two, and I think there's a third mushroom farm, but they're all around us. So between that and horse farms and wineries, we're kind of out in the country.
Wow, that's interesting. I didn't know that. I did not know that 70% of the mushrooms came from your area.
A fact that nobody is particularly interested in, but is a reality around here.
Interesting. That is so interesting. Look, we learned something new. Michael, you have been, and you're regarded as someone who's been in this industry. You've seen everything. A lot of the CX community in the inner circle is always engaging with you with the articles that you're writing because it comes from a practical application side of it, especially on customer think. And so I'm really curious. You've seen it all, or I think you've probably seen it all.
Seen a lot of it,
What
for
is
sure.
one thing that when you hear this or you see it in action or live or in action within an organization, what's the one thing that just makes you cringe so much that you wanted to come to the hot seat and unfuck today?
Well, if you're going to execute CX, there are a number of things that you need. And you've discussed them, I think, very eloquently and very thoroughly. One of the things that I see that's missing, I go back to a book called Firms of Endearment. It's humanity, it's leadership within the organization, which gets manifest really in the culture. So is there linkage? Is there integration between employee experience and customer experience? As you're aware, I've got a terminal degree. I was able to get it at a Grande École in France. And I focused really on how well are employees part of the overall value delivery spectrum within an organization. Are they supported? Are they nurtured? Are they for that in the first place? So, you can look at organizations like all the Virgin companies, Richard Branson. He's kind of a prime example of how to do it well. But for every Richard Branson, for every Wegmans, for every Trader Joe's, for every Costco, for every Zappos, and Umpqua Bank and Baptist Healthcare that do it well, there are hundreds that do not. And, I've taken an example of a major discount retailer, for instance, that has 70% employee turnover. Horrible, horrendous, astounding. You can't really execute, I don't care how effective the electronic versions, the AI versions of what you're doing with customer experience are. You're not going to get supported by employees with that kind of turnover. There's going to be no continuity. There's going to be no commitment. Their chief competitor has like a 10% employee turnover. That's during the first year. After the first year, it's under 10%. It's like 7%. So it's no wonder that their culture is strong. The linkage, the integration is strong. There's a formula that I follow, Seth Godin's formula of linchpins, for example. How all of this connects and why it needs to connect. It's why I get disturbed about a lot of the misinformation that's currently around about DEI and B. And the reality is when you start digging into it, as colleagues of mine have, and so have I, that there's a tremendous amount of profitability and strong business outcome associated with DEI if it's done right. If it's overdone, yeah, I can understand why there's a little bit of concern and a little bit of reticence, but eliminating it entirely, it's, as you've seen some of these major companies do, it's going to start biting them. In fact, it's already beginning to bite them. So, you've got to have three things to make this work. My background is TQM. It's customer brand, employee research, it's project management, and strategic planning. I see linkage and integration in all of this. You've got to have leadership. You've got to have the right culture. The second thing is you've got to be able to recognize that employees are like customers in this way. They have life cycles. I've consulted with companies that have allowed employees after a year to kind of fall off a cliff. They've forgotten about them. These employees are going to contribute if they're properly motivated, trained, all of these kinds of things throughout their life cycles. They have a lot to contribute if the organization understands that. And just like a company that gives a lot of largesse and goodies and prizes to new customers and then kind of forgets about existing ones, this can happen with employees as well. And the final thing is, I think, those are two of the three. The third one is, what are you trying to understand? You want to understand employee satisfaction? Do you want to understand employee engagement? My question is why. Nobody really understands what employee engagement is. Again, it was invented by a sociology professor at Boston University about 25 years ago. Conference Board in 2008 did this huge study, and nobody could figure out what employee engagement really meant. The same thing is true with employee satisfaction. It's passive, it's reactive, it's attitudinal, it's not very actionable. What I'm concerned about, focused on, is how does a company move up the path to get to employee commitment and employee advocacy? Employees are stakeholders just like customers are. You want employee commitment and advocacy just like you want customer commitment and advocacy. And you want to be able to do that on a consistent basis. And again, very few companies have kind of mastered that.
Yeah, I think it's so powerful, Michael. There's a couple of things I want to unpack with you really quickly that could actually be their own hot topics that we could unfuck. But the first one is really around employee experience, right? And I'm with you. I've seen it, a direct link between the employee and customer experience. So after I left Aaron's and I was leading retail experience strategy at Medallia, we had a handful of retailers who started to run an employee experience program. Now, we could always discuss, right, the level of maturity or whatever it is that it was at. But what we were able to do, Michael, is that we started to combine employee feedback, we combine and behavior, and then some of their HRIS data with customer feedback. So think of this as department store retailers. So they're servicing customers, they're checking those customers out, right? And so we start to look at the key drivers. What we started to see is the employees who loved where they worked, they felt empowered by their specific supervisors. They were satisfied, they're doing employee satisfaction. They were satisfied with their specific work. We actually saw on average, the average ticket size was just over $74 USD, higher than someone who says they weren't satisfied with their current work. They didn't feel empowered by their specific manager, and that they would be willing to take another job basically tomorrow if they got offered the exact same hours and wages.
Yeah.
There's that one connection, but you brought up DE&I. You and I have traded some messages on it. And I think what's happening right now with the rollback really is just symbolic of what's been happening in customer experience, right? Where ultimately I think executives were sold on this strategy. And then to your point, it was implemented and executed poorly. And for some brands, they launched it just to get out of the cancel culture phenomenon that was happening a couple years ago.
Mm-hmm.
States, but then ultimately they didn't understand the value of increasing talent that was available to them, and no one was able to connect those dots. And so now it's, well, this doesn't work for us. It's not
Yeah.
valuable. It won't work at our brand. And things get optimized and cost efficient out of the business, just like CX does. And so I'm curious from your point of view and just your expertise, when you think about this DE&I strategy, because I'm a full supporter of it, how should brands be thinking about connecting the dots between one, it's not an initiative, it's just foundationally the way that
Right.
we
And it
tell it.
always has been. Yes.
And then two, how do you get your executives to really understand this is the impact on the P&L if we do it right?
There's a core to all of this, and it's value delivery. It's all value delivery. Employees, just like customers, are critical stakeholders in doing this. One of the things that's kind of inherent in DEI and belonging, that's the B,
Yeah.
is VOE, the voice of the employee. Employees want skin in the game. They want to be active contributors. So, I'll give you a very quick example. There's a technique that I've been using, gosh, I think, since the beginning of my career. And there are some companies that do it, and a lot of companies don't. And it's what I define as mirroring. And it goes back actually to a management model from the 90s where you're looking at perceptual gaps between groups, between the leaders and the front line. In this case, it's between the employees and the customers. So what you want to do, if you can, as part of your overall employee experience program, is debrief employees the same way that you debrief customers on what's being delivered. Where are the alignments and gaps? And once you understand that, and you understand if those gaps end up being in significant value delivery areas, now you have opportunity to really bring employees closer to what's important in creating the experience. Employees invariably want it. They not only want to give feedback, they want to get feedback on what they've contributed. It's holistic, right? It's a complete model. It's a circular model. So if you can do that the way some of these companies that I've identified have done, then you're in great shape. My paradigm for this was over this MBNA, which got sold to Bank of America about 15 years ago. MBNA's culture, based in Wilmington, Delaware, was incredible. It's the kind of thing that that you proselytize about. Their core metrics were on television screens. I mean, this kind of stuff was in the 90s and early 2000s, kind of before internet got you to be able to deliver this right to your desk. Everything was in monitors all over the company. And one of the things that, was a big deal at MBNA is the default level of the cardholders. It was almost zero. That's because they were so close to the customers. Their mantra was think of yourself as a customer.
Yeah.
That was built into the culture. It was embedded into the DNA. So MBNA was one of those kinds of companies where they didn't lose employees, they didn't lose customers, they extended credit, they were very quick and very thorough with regard to customer support. It was a great example for other companies to follow. Did they? No, relatively few did. But it was a whole culture and set of processes built around creating value that employees help to deliver and that customers realize. That's linkage, that's integration. So, it goes back to the point that you made. What can companies do? Again, bring the employees into the process, bring them into the program. It's important, obviously, that you get objective, actionable data from the customers. You make that point in your material, in your content over and over again. I vigorously support that, certainly. The employees have a role in all of this. They're the ones, in addition to the electronics that you have, the advanced electronics, the text analytics that you can bring to bear, the chat, all of these kinds of things are valuable. Employees kind of, they round out the colors in the palette. They complete everything. So, again, as I've mentioned to you, my background is economics, it's TQM, it's customer brand, employee research. It kind of all comes together when you start to see what can a company benefit from? What can the stakeholders, the suppliers, employees, the customers, the leadership, benefit from when there is this integration and linkage. This is why I look at people like Seth Godin and, like you, I'm looking at customer lifetime value as what you're trying to achieve. Employees are just as integral in that
Yeah.
with customers.
It reminds me of this example I was doing about 18 months ago. And there was it's think of this as like a mid-tier luxury brand. And we were meeting with the executive team, and it was another one of their strategy sessions. And there was a pause within the organization. And the CEO, she said, look, we really want our customers to feel bold and empowered and confident when she leaves our boutique or stores. And so I said, tell me more about that. Why is that so important? That's just part of their brand, right? That they wanted her to feel. And so they had been running a VOE program for about a year. And so I said, well, let's just do a quick exercise. I said, let's open up your VOE dashboard and let's look at how do your employees feel?
Yeah.
And so we did it. And I said, look, if you want your customer, if you want her to feel bold and empowered and confident, your employees have to feel those exact same emotions because you cannot give what you don't have. So if I don't feel bold and empowered and confident on in this boutique serving these specific customers, I cannot give that emotion. I cannot serve with that emotion because I don't know what it is. And I'll never forget, Michael, the CEO just kind of looked at me and she's like, I've never thought about that before, right? Because they were running ENPS and some other things. And so the strategy shifted to, well, let's engage our employees to really understand, well, why don't they feel empowered? What's getting in their way of serving our customer when she walks into the boutique? What knowledge do they not have? What tools could they have at their disposal to really empower them to go serve her? And it blew her away. It was about 6 weeks later, it blew her away when she got that readout. And she basically said, I didn't realize we were handcuffing our employees from actually serving our customer. And everything completely shifted, right? Which is great. But it also raises, I want to end on this because you're in the hot seat. You gave us our 3-player tips. I'm really curious in your mind, who should be leading employee experience strategy in any organization?
Great question.
Is the HR leader really equipped with the skill set and knowledge to do it?
I asked this very question some years back at a conference where there was a round table and Jack Welch was there. And I was in the first row. And I said, who's responsible? I asked him, who's responsible for this, Jack? You're famous for having a top down and bottom up, it's bottom up as far as GE is concerned. I want to understand, what your thinking is on this. And here's what he told me. He said, if you look at a football team, who is the most important person? Is it the quarterback? No. Is it the coach? No. It's the head of player personnel. And I said, well, that's interesting. Now I can use an analogy. I live outside Philadelphia. Howie Roseman is the EVP and head of player personnel at the Eagles, for the Philadelphia Eagles, the world champion Philadelphia Eagles. So you can look at Howie Roseman as the architect of the employee experience and the performance of the Philadelphia Eagles. So I saw it come true in real time. If you go back to Peter Senge, who looked at what are employees? They're knowledge workers.
Yeah.
Employees have insights. Every time I do a study with employees, particularly if I'm doing a parallel study with customers, I'm doing this mirroring work in these areas of value delivery. Employee 1, employee 2, employee 3. What do you see relative to what the customers are saying? Are you in alignment? Are there perceptual gaps? And I didn't invent this. I mean, you can look at Daniel Kahneman, you can look at Philip Kotler. They understand this as well. So it's grounded in academic research, but it plays out for practitioners like you and like me to make it happen. And that's why I've been passionate about this for like 25 years and see it play out again and again and again, positively and negatively with clients.
Yeah.
So, the point that you make is absolutely spot on. Employees, if it's, and it's often, as you found in your examples, it's often kind of a revelation, an absolute revelation. Really? How did that happen? Why wasn't I aware of that? Well, it requires kind of more progressive and evolved thinking coming from leadership and how it's performed within the culture, within the operations, within the DNA of the company. If they get it, they get it. If they don't, they still have upside learning to do.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Michael, this has been phenomenal. I feel like we could just continue to have conversations. You got to come back to the hot seat.
Oh, I love.
But really quickly, if our listeners want to learn more about you, get in touch with you, read some of your, articles that are just jam-packed with expert guidance, where can they find you?
Well, they can find, if they look me up on Customer Think. I've written like 400 different posts for Customer Think over the years. Got me into their Hall of Fame a few years ago. You can get to me on LinkedIn, obviously. You can get to me, mwlowenstein@gmail.com. I'm part of Customer Value Creation International. I'm on their advisory board. I'm also an associate editor with the Journal of Creating Value. There are a number of ways to find me.
Very cool. Well, Michael, again, thank you so much. Until next time, cheers, my friend.
I enjoyed it. Thank you, Zach. Have a great day.